Peter Bleksley's here with me. We are now here for 4 big hours, all the way through till 10 o'clock, so you don't want to miss any of it. We've got loads to do. We've got Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris tonight coming up. We're starting off at 1 a.m, so you don't want to miss that, going all the way through till 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's get a voice note from JB on the government.
Good morning. They should make manifestos a legal document so these people could be accounted for and something can be done, because it's wrong to lie to people. Any other world, slander. You see Gary Lineker, he gets done all over the shop for what he says. What does Keir Starmer do? Nothing.
I know. It's extraordinary, isn't it, Peter, that, you know, it literally is one day after another lie comes out from the Labour government. Things that they said they wouldn't do, they're now doing. Things that they said they would do, they're now not doing.
And they wonder why the public hold politicians in such low esteem.
Yes, you know.
I mean, it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
It's like the nose on the end of your face.
It is.
If you say one thing and then you do something completely different,
right,
then the public are not going to trust you.
No.
It's very, very simple.
Well, it's like you said, you know, if somebody as likely, an old friend of yours comes up and says, you know, stop behaving like an idiot, do this, don't do that, you know, in what world would you ever be friends with somebody who continually just told you lies? You would just go, look, sorry, we're not hanging out anymore, because all you can do is talk absolute rubbish and promise me this, promise me that, and then do nothing about it.
And the excuse that I've heard so many times from this government is that, well, we were in opposition.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know the state of the finances. Excuse me, you're His Majesty's opposition.
Exactly.
You have far greater access to the machinery of government than you and I do sitting in a studio.
They know plenty about the finances. They knew everything they needed to know. Let's talk about the police, though, because there's quite a few stories knocking around today, and you were mentioning last night there was a show, I think on Channel 4, but the story in the Sun today, the leader of the inquiry into the police shooting of Chris Kaba was warned of rioting had his team not probed it as a homicide. So effectively they're saying the police had to look into the shooting of Chris Kaba, a well-known and absolutely infamous gangster, one of the worst gangsters I think London's ever seen. They had to look into it as if it was a murder case, because otherwise there would have been fears that there would be riots in the streets.
Well, let's go back to September 2022, when a man who, in my eyes, is extremely courageous, Sergeant Martin Blake, fired one shot because he felt that his life or the life of his colleagues were in immediate danger, through the window of an Audi, high-powered, 2.5 ton
which was driving
vehicle,
at him at the time, wasn't it?
Which was shunting back and forth, trying to evade the block that the police had put in on it. And Martin Blake fired one shot, which turned out to be fatal for Chris Kaba. Last night, there was a BBC Panorama documentary on the shooting of Chris Kaba. I'm sure we can all remember that only a couple of weeks ago, Martin Blake was rightfully acquitted of murder. This documentary was so skewed, so biased, and missed out such vitally important information as to have zero credibility.
Wow.
I watched it, so viewers and listeners don't have to.
Well, thank you for that. We're just seeing, even as we speak, footage which we played, of course, the other day, of Chris Kaba walking into a nightclub, shooting a guy in the leg, and then chasing him down the street, shooting him again. And that was a separate incident to the one in which he ended up dying. On a packed dance floor in a nightclub. And what this BBC Panorama failed to mention last night was that at the time Kaba was shot, his sleeve had firearms residue on it. Bearing in mind that vehicle was involved in a shooting the night before,
the previous day, and that he had a balaclava in his possession. They conveniently failed to mention any of that. But back to the point you raise about the leader of the IOPC, as was, is not in that position anymore.
That's the Independent Office of Police Conduct.
Correct, So they, of course, launched their investigation, as they do every time there is a police shooting. That's only right. But what they did after just a few days was announce it as a homicide investigation. So that very much, in the minds of people, skews it towards thinking, well, he was unlawfully shot then.
Exactly. He must have been. Well, I remember thinking at the time, surely the way that the news were actually reporting it was that here was a black man who was stopped by the police. There was no mention of the fact that he was trying to ram his way out of a situation with, you know, police officers all around him, telling him to get out of the car, telling him to show his hands. No mention of any of that. And it sounded, for all intents and purposes, that he may well have been somebody who was trying to, I don't know, get away from the police, but at no point was the actual situation described properly. Do you know what I mean?
Until it got to the Old Bailey.
Yeah.
And the jury went, in 3 hours, slung it out.
Right.
Slung it out.
I know.
No case to answer.
Exactly. Absolutely incredible. Let's talk about another story which is in the papers today, and I see you are in need of some assistance there with the old water scenario. But here we go. 600 police officers, this is in the Daily Mail, sacked in 1 year amid a misconduct crackdown. Record numbers of police officers have been kicked out of the force, with dismissals rocketing by 50% in the last year alone. Apparently, almost 600 officers were sacked and banned from returning to any police job in the year to March 2024. Now, I'm one of those people who would say, you don't necessarily suddenly work out that loads of police officers are no good, do you? Or is there something more going on here?
There's a lot more to come on this story. In fact, I can exclusively reveal that the Commissioner of the Met, Mark Rowley, wanted to sack 600 a year.
Really?
In his service alone.
Right.
There's a real purge going on. And basically, the police are reaping what they've sown because they dropped the vetting, they lowered the entry standards so dramatically that, quite frankly, people who are not fit to serve as police officers got in.
Got in. So these are people that are getting kicked out as a result of that. Let's take a little break. Let's take a little break and then you can catch your breath, because I know when you get something stuck in your throat, there's nothing worse. Listen, don't worry, Morning Glory is here. We've got plenty more to do. Peter Bleksley is here as well. We're going to be talking about the US election, which is coming up very, very shortly. In a few hours' time, people are going to go to the polls in the United States of America and either vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris.